Michele Salmon, Brisbane resident. I need about 20 more years to study the Calliope. But for tonight's purpose, give me 10 minutes and I promise not to use them all.
Okay.
Honorable Council, thank you for the opportunity to give testimony and for keeping an open mind and enduring patience through this process. Normally, I don't like to read from a script, but this issue is so important that I did not want to forget to say the things I wanted to say, so I wrote it out. Many people told me that this is a done deal, and their minds are already made up, and you're wasting your time, but I don't believe that. This is not a done deal. I know that it is not a done deal because I believe in each of you and the power you have to speak for the people of Brisbane and to speak in defense of the butterfly and demand what is right for our future. You have heard from many people tonight, experts and lawyers, staff and citizens. You've no doubt read stacks and stacks of documents, and there will be more to hear and more to read. You know from talking to me that I do not want any more building on San Bruno Mountain, and especially in this critical area so essential to the Calliope Silver Spot and to the Mission Blue. But that is not what I'm here to ask of you tonight. I am here to ask you to do something positive. I am asking you to request a new environmental impact report before proceeding with any more development on the Northeast Ridge. There are numerous legal and scientific reasons to support this request. Let me just touch on a few highlights. In 1982, when asked about the dangers of building near the PG&E transmission lines, the response was that TRA had conducted extensive surveys of literature on the health effects associated with high voltage transmission lines and found no consistent report of adverse effects at electric fields that could be experienced under the 115 kilovolts on the Northeast Ridge, except for interference with pacemakers or if a perfectly grounded person touched a large insulated vehicle. But that would only shock you to the level of annoyance, well below the level of electrical safety standards. And this comes straight from the 1982 EIR. We certainly know better today, as Terry illustrated, and yet this was still considered okay in 1989. I believe this to be a major reason that Southwest Diversified abandoned the project and sold it off to Brookfield. In 1982 and 1989, the Calliope Silver Spot was not listed and not protected under the Endangered Species Act. In the 1982 EIR and the 1989 addendum, the Calliope Silver Spot was still just a species of concern. At the City Council special meeting on February 11, 2008, the official minutes indicate that Special Counsel Leiter stated that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife evaluated the Calliope Silver Spot butterfly as a species of concern and quoted an excerpt from the amendment agreement indicating that the parties' awareness that certain species of concern could be designated as endangered in the future and identifying steps to be taken. In the current addendum on page 8, paragraph 1, it says, the Calliope had not been listed under the ESA but was regarded as imperiled, and its population biology and ecology on the mountain were studied in detail in preparing the HCP, footnote 5. Remember on January 4th, during oral communications, when I asked you to read the footnotes because the truth was in the footnotes? Footnote from number 5 says, the service proposed to list the Calliope under the ESA in 1978. In 1980, however, all areas available for development within San Bruno Mountain were designated as critical habitat for the endangered Mission Blue butterfly. The service therefore allowed the listing proposal for the Calliope to expire on the basis that the designation of the Mission Blue habitat also protected the Calliope, which used essentially the same habitat. The fact that the Calliope was not listed under the ESA when the HCP was adopted, therefore does not indicate that the Calliope and its habitat had not been the object of extensive study and consideration by the service when adopting the HCP. Yes, that is a double negative. Something is wrong here. First off, it is my understanding that the service does not do its own studies. It only evaluates the studies done by others. Whose work were they evaluating when they decided that the Calliope was essentially the same as the Mission Blue because both used grassland habitat and therefore the Calliope had been addressed? We know now that while they may appear to use the same habitat as in cohabitation, their behavior, their mating habits, and host plants are quite different and are not essentially the same at all. Therefore, the mitigations specifically for them are not properly addressed. It is the same problem as applying the studies of meadow butterflies used in road verges, see page 21 and read the footnotes, to imply that the Calipes will do the same thing. Bad science, and this is what you're being asked to approve. I'd like to call your attention to more bad science. The addendum also says on page 22, paragraph 1, in addition, the Calliope has been observed flying across Guadalupe Canyon Parkway during the annual monitoring over the past 25 years. I looked at recent monitoring reports from 2006 and 2008. On page 5 of the year 2006 activities report dated February 2007, it reads, this includes 2 new transects that were added in 2005 to the previous 12 Calliope silver spot transects monitored in prior years. Transects 13 and 14 were created east of the terminus of Carter Street at Guadalupe Canyon Parkway. You all know where that is because you've seen it on the map. This location was chosen in order to learn more about the potential Calliope presence and movement in grasslands north of Guadalupe Canyon Parkway and habitat at the west end of the Northeast Ridge as residential development is planned within parcels on the Northeast Ridge. In 2006, the Calliope count on Transect 13 was 0. And on Transect 14, the count was 3 in 12 minutes on only one of the 5 days monitored. However, in their translation on the chart, it shows as an average of 3.75 per hour because they only counted 3 in 12 minutes on one of the 5 days. So that was an average of 15 sightings per hour, and divided by 5 days, that somehow translates to an average of 3.75 per hour on the report. Now we have bad math to corroborate bad science. In 2008, according to the report, page 5, this is 2 years later, when they yet again monitored the Calliope, Transect 14, that I'm quoting, was not monitored as the area where this transect was located is now under modification. They were cutting the eucalyptus and disturbing all of the grassland there. Transect 13, however, is outside of the proposed development zone and was monitored in 2008. Page 6, however, gives the bad news. Calipes were observed on all transects in 2008 except for Transect 13. The conclusion in the report, Transect 13 was established in 2005 to collect data on butterfly presence as it is across from the section of the Northeast Ridge planned for development by Brookfield Homes. Very few butterflies have been seen on Transect 13 and no Calliope silver spot were seen in 2008. It is recommended that this transect be abandoned in future Calliope silver spot monitoring efforts. But wait, isn't this part of the very corridor that we are expecting the Calliope to fly over from one hilltop to another, over Carter Street and over Guadalupe? And let me also point out that Carter Street didn't exist in 1982 or 1989, and Guadalupe was half as wide as it is now. I mean, what's wrong here? This is not the first time the TRA's monitoring of the butterflies has come into question. I'm referring specifically to the Longcore report and would like that referenced for the record. That's what Philip mentioned. The Longcore report is very critical of TRA's monitoring scheme, calling it opportunistic rather than pre-structured, making it haphazard rather than random. And they are nevertheless deficient as a technique to gather data about butterflies from which statistical inferences can be made. And TRA is still making these inferences in the annual report. If you were to believe TRA's reports, both butterflies are thriving and the ACP is a success that lacks only more funding. I'm sorry, I may not be an expert, but I did graduate with honors in biology, and I can see when data is being manipulated to present a rosy picture. This calls into question the well-being of the mission butterfly as well.